Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you all of you who decided to come and join our panel. And a big thank you to Nikola Pavesic and to good people from Infobip for having us. Amazing conference. I hope you guys are enjoying it. And we're in charge of bringing a little bit of a sports flair to the developers world. So hopefully we're going to share some good insights on the latest in sports tech, sports entertainment, and all of the related industries. A little bit of a background for both of our panelists before we get started. If you guys have been watching Croatian football in the last couple of years, and if you cried tears of joy or been to one of the greetings of the national team in 2018 and 2022, Luka Milanovic, the strength and conditioning coach, the head strength and conditioning coach, is directly in charge of the success of our team and for keeping the guys ready. And Toni Jermanis headlining the business development of Sofascore, one of our biggest live score apps, a company that we're all very, very proud of, so doing wonderful things. I'm going to start with a question for Luka and kickstart the whole discussion with a very easy topic. If two guys that don't know each other, you know, from different countries meet in a bar in London and they both like football and one of them is Croatian, there's 99% chance that one of them is going to mention Luka Modric. And being around you these 2 days, I can tell as soon as people figure out who you are, that's the first question. So can you tell us a little bit about Luka's journey, about his acceptance to new technologies and his lifestyle and, you know, the key to his longevity?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, Luka is definitely doing many things good. Now, last years, as I think about it, I find more and more things that he does in a perfect way. I think it all starts with the mindset. And, you know, a mindset to just make good small decisions during the day. Sometimes it's just boring, it's nothing special. But to make good decisions considering the rest, sleep, diet, additional training sessions, how to be calm, how to do, you know, press conferences, shirt signings in economic way without energy expenditure, which is, you know, over the top. How to handle everything with ease. And that's something that he's best at, definitely. Plus, of course, genetics and everything else that he has. But I think it's the mindset that's separating him from the rest. You know, basically, it all starts there.
Yeah, the formula is quite simple when you put it like that. Is do your job every day consistently. And, you know, we had this discussion before. You know, what is the secret to, you know, successful athletes? It's do your job, right? It's boring, exactly. But you have to do it. And Luka is one of the best at it.
Yeah, it's simple, but it's not easy. In team sports especially, it's simple. Everything we say, it's, you know, it sounds simple, and it is simple, but it's not easy to achieve that. Everybody from 50 people that live together and work together, everybody just does their own job, not thinking about anybody else's work or job, staying positive, staying optimistic, and how to turn down the ego. I think we all have the same issues, either in sports or business environment, how to turn down the ego, how to handle it, because ego is important for you to develop, of course, but how to be beneath the common goal. We are very lucky in our team that we have the coach who is like that. His personality is like that. He's always beneath the common goal. And we have the captain who is the silent leader, and he's also being able to turn down the ego and stay below the common goal. And then when those two are like that, everybody else just follows.
Yeah. It sounds very simple, but it's hard achieving it, right? The simplicity of it. Well, from your perspective, Toni, and from Sofascore perspective, moving on to consumption of sports, right? All of us are sports fans. All of us consume sports in one way or another. How have you seen the trends, you know, the short attention spans, the overall consumption in sports and the latest trends? How have Sofascore and yourself been dealing with everything that's going on?
It's a really interesting topic when you look at it, because at the same time users want more and more, but their attention span is dropping. So nowadays, for a person to commit 2 hours to watch a game, it's probably rarer than it was before. But when they do that, they want data. They actually want more statistical data points that can contextualize what they are actually seeing. Like, all of us has a feeling, okay, this player is playing well, this player is not playing really good. But when you look at the data, and the data is there to confirm that, that is what the users are wanting and needing. The other side of that spectrum is that we are seeing more and more people, for them is enough just to see the video highlights. And it's enough, okay, somebody, they can see on Sofascore that somebody had a great match, then they will watch the highlights, and that's even enough. But you started the topic with Luka Modric. You started with the conversation in a bar. Whether the consumer is changing how they are consuming the sport, that passion remains. Users still follow sports because of that passion. Because of all of that, Luka Modric and the Croatian national team did.
So to piggyback on your point, data is king, right? The data points, all the data that you collect now more than ever, right? In all the sports, you're tracking literally everything. The technologies are enabling us to have information on literally every movement. But aside from that, and even taking that into consideration, Luka, you spoke about the method that you and the staff, the coaching staff, the way you reach your decisions. And can you tell us a little more about it and how much you rely on the data?
Sure. We collect a lot of data, definitely, but we like to follow this, eyes, ears, numbers, in that order. So we first use our eyes and ears, and then data, then numbers. Numbers are there daily. We can collect so much data from each training session, let alone the games. We can track sleep, we can track a lot of things, but it's not the more the better, it's not like that. We have to be really selective, and our challenge, I think the sports team's challenge today is how to be as selective as possible and to get the proper data which you can actually use in training or in making decisions. Not all data is important for making decisions. So we are not struggling, but we are focusing on how to choose what's the really most important thing for us to make decisions. And a lot of it is individualized. For example, tracking of sleep. I have some players who really like to track sleep. I have some players who track their sleeping patterns for a year and then they stopped because they do not want the app to tell them how they feel in the morning. So it changes. I have some players who are really serious about nutrition, additional training sessions, recovery strategies, but they don't want to track sleep. It's too much for them. I have some others who really like to track sleep because their heart rate variability, for example, is extremely high and it's a good confidence boost for them. So it depends, definitely. We have to get to know them personally and we have to see what is going to create great effect on the pitch. That's the only measurement.
But ultimately, it's the eyes and ears and the conversation that
at first
that are the
data is
test.
there definitely, but we like to choose which data is really important for each individual.
Yeah.
I mean, that is quite interesting because we actually have the same challenge. Like we can get amazing, more than 200, 300 different kinds of data points on a player. But if you would put that out there for the consumer, for the users, that would be too much. So we also are trying to look at maybe, 100, 200 different statistical categories, put it down to one that people can really relate. That is where our Sofascore statistical rating comes in for that contextualization.
So to continue the discussion on data and the stats, and you can start by answering this, Toni. How much is enough? I mean, for you to provide the ultimate consumer, consumer wants shot charts. They want real life statistics. Like watching a regular game is just not enough anymore. So how much data and how much information do we actually need as the ultimate sports consumer? And how much are you seeking to provide? Because like you said, you can't really overload people with information because then it gets lost in the whole game.
I mean, at the end of the day, you need to have like really cool features that can showcase that for persons to consume what they really want really, really fast. Because as you put it rightly, if we put everything out like an Excel sheet, then that is boring. It's just a number. But if you put an interesting graphic to it, if you have a really, really good design, if you put it out there for the consumer to feel it, and maybe even like after they watch the game in the same in the same way Luka needs the eyes and the ears, for them to confirm what they saw, that is actually where we are giving them the extra value.
Because you make a great point saying, depending on the perspective, the game can be either too short or too long. If you're watching it and it's boring and the attention spans are getting smaller, but then again, for you as someone who's selling the product, you want to keep the the consumer engaged, right? Pre-game, live betting, live scores, fantasy leagues, Sofascore, the final marks of the player. So that's interesting because what's the optimal time, right? How much do you want to keep them engaged?
I mean, our ultimate goal is to keep them in the app for as long as they can stay. But it is a tricky thing, because if you put too much of the things in the app, then that would be overwhelming. But what we are seeing is that users need that. They need fantasy games. They need gamifications of those type, because that is actually giving them, how would I put it, like an extra commitment to the game, and it is easier for them to follow it. Because nowadays, I think rarely people commit their Saturday and Sundays to watch the Premier League for, I don't know, 8, 10 hours. Nowadays, they will probably watch just one match, but they still want to know who played well, and they need that result quickly and correctly.
Fantastic. So to ask you a question, Luka, we're collecting all the numbers, right? And all the numbers are being collected in order to make players more efficient, to make the team more successful. But throughout those changes, and I have a great example that I lived through in the NBA, are we sacrificing the quality of the product? Because, for example, when I played in the NBA, we had a team of analytics come to our locker room and gave us a big presentation on how we should never shoot a two-point shot ever again. It makes no sense to shoot a two-point shot. Launch as many threes as you can, and even if you shoot them with a bad percentage, the number is still going to be high and it's going to give us a better chance to win. But the consumer and the regular fan doesn't want to watch a game in which, there's 60 or 70 three-point shots launched. So, talk a little bit about how your opinion is on, the data that we collect in order to make the games or to make the team efficient, but how do you think is affecting the overall quality and the experience of a fan?
I think it's normal evolution of the game. For example, in basketball, just like football, I think it's normal, and it had to be like that. But now the teams are going to adapt, and everything is going to adapt to that. So it's just normal. In football, of course, we see a lot of segmentation, for example. For example, set pieces, as you know probably what they are, throwing out or corner kicks or free kicks. We have specialized coaches just for throwing outs, for example, in some top-level teams. But is that good? I don't know exactly. Because every time you add another person on the staff, you got to give him something to do. If he has to do something that maybe it's not worthwhile, not every detail is as important. So on one hand, I think it's going to be even more intense. I think the number of matches in a year is going to be even higher. Right now, it's really high. That creates some risk for injury. And it's probably going to be even more. That is forcing us to be smarter in our programming. That's forcing us to be smarter in training, in selection, and football is going to change in 10 years. So if I now train my players to be good on this level and in this football, I'm probably not doing it good enough, especially with young players, because 10 years from now, it's going to be a different game. In which way, I don't know exactly, but it's probably going to be even more intense. It's probably going to be more sprints, more accelerations, decelerations, more all of the high-intensity actions. But of course, it's going to differ between positions. For example, we see in wing players 600 meters of sprint, because not every sprint is a sprint. If you ask the GPS, only 25 plus kilometers per hour is a sprint. So what is acceleration? There's so many parameters that we need to look at, depending on the position, depending on the style of play, depending on our formation, depending on many things. And it's probably going to evolve even more.
You opened up a great topic that I wanted to touch on a little more, but we can start discussing right now. I want to hear from both of you the future of football, for example, the biggest sport in the world. Do you see the format changing? I mean, what is your opinion? I would like to hear, because the 90-minute format is sacred, right? It's engraved into our culture. It's just too big to tamper with, right? But with everything that's going on, do you feel like, what are we looking at in 20 or 30 years with the technologies, with the immersive, with the, AR, VR? I mean, do you feel like the sport is going to change?
So, I mean, the way people consume sports, probably it is always changing. But will the game actually change? Maybe in the style of play like Luka did. But to artificially make the game more interesting, I think that is the tricky part. If we would to look at our statistics, the most entertaining league in the world should be the second-tier Dutch league, because that is the league where you have the highest of Sofascore statistical ratings. So you have the most goals, you have the most key passes, the most dribbles. But if you look at the numbers in Sofascore, even our Croatian first-tier division is way more popular than the second-tier Dutch division. So it isn't that simple of a topic that, okay, if you have more goals, if you have more of those interesting style of play, that the game will be more interesting. It is much more deeper than that. So I think it's quite hard when, and I think it is quite naive that somebody can think that with changing of the concept of with more goals or with anything that they might seem it's more interesting, that they will actually increase the popularity of that competition.
I totally agree with Toni, and of course, then we go back to emotion again. And anticipation in football is equally important than, scoring a lot of goals. It's not important sometimes to score a lot of goals, but it's always almost there. It's almost there. So I think emotion and things like that are gonna still be as important as now, because in football, 1 + 1 + 1 is rarely 11, because of the interactions of players. It makes them worth more or less. So it's rarely 11. And that's why you don't need sometimes top-level players, but your team is worth 15, for example. Or with top-level players and bad interactions, it's worth 5.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's always I think in football especially is that about the winner in the extra time. You're always waiting because probably just one goal, sometimes one, sometimes two, they can change everything.
There's always hope.
There is always hope, and we have multiple examples where actually that happened, where everything changed. And I think that rush is the thing that is keeping football out of reach for any other sport.
Unfortunately, the three of us lived it. I don't know how many Italians we have in the room, but what happened in the last-minute goal in the Euros, the goal that Italy scored against us, you were there, obviously. It was crushing for everyone watching it. But that's the hope that you're talking about. And it's not over until it's over.
Yeah.
But to stay a little longer on the statistical categories that, add on to the data topic, the most important things ultimately cannot be found in statistics, right? Because how do you measure effort? How do you measure grit? How do you measure, your effect on team spirit? Despite all the data points and all of the statistical categories, there are some things that you just can't put, black on white.
yes, sometimes you have a player who is really important for the team, not only because of the motivation and communication, but he's doing really important, dirty work on the pitch or on the court, and it's not really visible in the stats, but he's a crucial player. So sometimes it's not all visible, and not all assists are the same, for example. We discussed that.
Exactly, yeah. Because, not every point is the same.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same value. Not every statistical is... What do you think about it, Toni?
So I think I completely agree with you. But when I approach sports, I still like to think that it's all about the passion. I think that really what makes sports such a big and entertainment, even industry, is that anybody can do it. Everybody of us started with some kind of sports where we were young, and I think that feeling that, I don't know, there is always stopping. Okay, if I didn't had that injury, maybe now I would be playing pro. I think that because the entry level, the entry to the sports is so open. No matter whether you're from Croatia, Nigeria, Brazil, wherever, everybody can start, and everybody can actually feel that passion because at one point in their lifetime they were part of that game.
Could you tell us a little more? We spoke about this a little earlier. The thing that Sofascore is doing in terms of just immersing itself in the community, the interaction with the community, the things you guys are doing with the Sofascore editor. Basically, the goal is to have every person doing sports on an amateur level, the young kids, for proud fathers to be able to track their, kids doing little leagues in Sofascore, right? So tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, this is something that we like to call it is a democratization of sports. So what we are seeing that, of course, professional football and professional sports is where everybody's eyes are, but actually the amateur sphere of sports is the huge one. And we are using the same infrastructure of Sofascore that we built for the professional sports to have all of those really fast push notifications, great design being used for amateur sports. Actually, here in Zadar, we had like Rudež, I think is the name of the football tournament that was being played, where young players were starting to play, and we have enabled those we enabled those kind of tournaments to have the same access and for them to popularize their players. And I mean, ultimately, it would be a goal that the next Luka Modric, that we have the data of when and how they were playing when they were 10 years old, and maybe how Luka Modric will actually play when he's like 45, 50, playing at, I don't know, Kutija Šibica or something like that.
Fantastic. I would like to open it up for questions. We have 3 or 4 more minutes left, so if anybody has a question, please don't be shy. Nobody wants to break the ice? I can't see. Oh, sorry. Nikola, is that you?
Yeah, it's me.
No provocative questions,
It's
please.
cheating because it's me. Hey, my name is Nikola. Thank you for coming, guys. We discussed this yesterday over beer, but I was like wondering, and you said, do you, especially in football, and I think Damjan you mentioned in basketball, like, do you have situations more than one where there's skewed data and it somehow has great stats, and then you think he's a bad player? I know a lot of people think that, like, you think someone had a terrible game, and then you look at the stats in Sofa, by the way, and you go like, oh, look at this, he's actually pretty good, but your impression is like, no, he's not that good. Like, any concrete examples? Damjan, you had in basketball, you say as well.
Yeah, I think in basketball, it's maybe more often the case. In football, where statistic is a little bit different, then we can maybe see the running data, which can sometimes give us something different. For example, sometimes we see player who we think had incredible running-wise match, but when you look at the numbers, it's nothing spectacular, but his timing was perfect, for example. So we had, for example, Luka Modric in the last game against Poland. He looked fantastic, and his numbers were okay, were good, but not as good as the things we saw on the pitch. So he was impressive in terms of timing and what he did in these high-speed runs. So we see many things, definitely. And in football, it's not as, it's not the same as basketball in terms of stats, but we also see some different things, some differences between eyes and data.
I actually think that is a good thing, because if we could actually put everything, every data point that is happening on the game, and completely know what is happening, who is the best, then we are actually losing that part of the magic, that part of the rush, that part of your opinion on what is actually happening on the field. So we are always, at Sofascore, we are always trying to have the best statistical Sofascore rating, but at the end of the day, I think it is actually good that we are not always getting it right, because we are opening the sports, and we are proving it that it is entertaining, especially because of that.
Especially, yeah, fantastic. And that would be the last point, right? Because in the end, you need to leave it humanized, and you need to leave space for, your judgment, your subjective opinion, your emotion, right? Because in the end, that's what sports ultimately is. And that's never going to change despite all of the technologies. So thank you guys so much. Please, big round of applause for our panelists. We'll be around, and thank you so much for attending.
Before you leave, Damjan, Hajduk Split or Dinamo?
I run a sports festival, so I am not allowed to answer that question. I have to have both of them present there, but I'm born in Zagreb, so I live 200 meters from Dinamo Stadium, so I have to say Dinamo. I'm a Dinamo fan. We have a fantastic relationship with Hajduk regarding our festival, but Dinamo. Ultimately, if you put a gun to my head, I gotta say Dinamo.
Okay, Luke and Toni, you guys?
Number 1, Croatia. Number 2, Dinamo.
Only Rijeka. Only Rijeka.
Only Rijeka, bravo. Excellent. Thank you, guys. Round of applause, please.
Thank you.